Mark D'Antonio and Nick Saban were both legendary coaches for Michigan State, and the program has seen a good amount of success this past decade. They ended up winning a Rose Bowl and went to the college football playoff, and have had some pretty memorable names along the way. They did start to sputter off towards the end of the decade, and D'Antonio unexpectedly retired. From there, they were forced to make a late coaching hire, and they went and nabbed Colorado head coach Mel Tucker. From first glance, it looks like it was one of the worst hires of the 2020 college football season, but if you take a closer look at it, Mel Tucker is actually doing a pretty good job at Michigan State. Last season was pretty deceiving, and he could be building a potential monster in East Lansing. In today's video, I want to introduce you to who Mel Tucker is, why he is actually doing a great job at Michigan State, and why the future is also very bright for them. But before we get started, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, as 85% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and we need to make that number better. Be sure to let me know another coach, player, or topic I can do next, and also be sure to check out my new podcast with college football players. Now let's get started and talk about the truth about Michigan State football and Mel Tucker. So who is Mel Tucker, you may be asking? Well, let's go back in time and see who he is. He was born in Cleveland, Ohio, and actually went on to play football for the Wisconsin Badgers. He began his coaching career in 1997 as a graduate assistant under Nick Saban at Michigan State. From there, he'd move on to another legendary coach, as in 2001, he became the defensive backs coach for Jim Tressel at Ohio State. In 2005, he'd go over to the NFL with the Cleveland Browns, and he'd coach defensive backs from 2005 to 2007, and was actually promoted defensive coordinator in 2008. In 2009, he was hired by the Jaguars for the same role, and was actually an interim head coach at one point. He had success there, and then was named the defensive coordinator of the Chicago Bears. Unfortunately, they'd have one of the worst defensive seasons in Bears history in 2013, and he was widely criticized by the media, and after one more year, went back to the college world. He spent the 2015 season with the Alabama Crimson Tide as an assistant head coach and defensive backs coach under Saban, and then spent 3 years as a defensive coordinator at Georgia, where he really made a name for himself. On December 5th, 2018, he became the next head coach of the Colorado Buffaloes after Mike McIntyre was fired. His first season in Boulder was full of promise, as they beat number 25 Nebraska, number 24 Arizona State, and Washington, but also had losses to Air Force, UCLA, and Arizona, and they ended up going 5-7. Going across the country, things began to go south for Mark D'Antonio at Michigan State, so in mid-February, they had to find a new coach. They originally wanted Luke Fickell, but they eventually would pry Mel Tucker out of Boulder with money, and he was hired to be the next head coach of the Spartans. This caused a lot of outrage, because a few weeks earlier, Tucker took to Twitter and said he would not leave Colorado, but as we all know, money talks in the coaching world. He only had a few weeks to prepare before the world would be shut down, and things were going to be extremely tough in year one. The quarterback position was going to be worrisome, as Brian Lewerke had graduated, and they'd have a new quarterback in Rocky Lombardi. He would struggle tremendously though, and youngster Peyton Thorne would show some promise towards the end of the season. They had a logjam at both running back and wide receiver, but they found some super promising young players. The defense struggled, special teams was terrible, the offensive line play was subpar, and quarterback play was not very good, but there were some reasons to be optimistic. They beat the rival number 13 Michigan in a thriller, and also managed to ruin number 8 Northwestern's perfect season, but the losses did not look good. They looked outmatched, outcoached, and just downright terrible in every single game, as in week 1 they lost Rutgers and would get blown out in all 4 of their other losses. It was a season of highs and lows, with a lot more lows than highs. They went 2-5 in year 1 under Tucker, and he was going to have some major work to do. After their loss to Ohio State, Tucker had a fiery press conference mentioning that there were going to be changes to the roster. Those changes would definitely come, as Tucker was one of the busiest coaches in the transfer portal, sending a ton of guys out and bringing a ton of players in. He got rid of a lot of the lower level players from the team, while he added a ton of great players. The 2021 class only had one 4-star recruit, but the transfer portal was Tucker's best friend. They landed Ronald Williams, a former 4-star from Alabama, Malik Carr, a former 4-star from Purdue, Quavarius Crouch, a former 4-star from Tennessee, experienced wide receiver Christian Fitzpatrick from Louisville, 4-star recruit Itavian Brown from Minnesota, a really talented running back Kenneth Walker from Wake Forest, Ben Van Zumeren from Michigan, Harold Joyner, a former 4-star running back from Auburn, Drew Jordan, a 4-star defensive lineman from Duke, and one of the best quarterbacks in Temple football history in Anthony Russo. I could have named even more, and there was a lot of talent there. These are a lot of players who didn't get a fair shot at their former schools, but they have the talent and the stars to potentially make a big impact. Tucker also stressed landing bigger players on the offensive line, as every lineman that has been recruited so far is taller than 6'5". The quarterback position is in pretty good hands, as Peyton Thorne showed a lot of promise in his first start. And if he's not ready, Anthony Russo should be a great veteran starter for them in 2021. He was a star for Temple throughout the years and had some of the best numbers of any transfer quarterback. Looking ahead a little bit, they landed one of the hottest names in the 2022 recruiting cycle in Katin Hauser, who is a former Boise State commit who has blown up at the Elite 11 camp. There were two very tough setbacks in the recruiting game though, as they lost 4-star running back Audric Estime on early signing day when he decided to go to Notre Dame instead of Michigan State. They also got hit on actual signing day with a shocking loss as 4-star defensive tackle Sean Benny decided to flip from the Spartans to the Wolverines. Overall though, he landed a ton of instant impact transfers at positions that were very thin, which will allow the team to be pretty competitive this year. There's already a decent amount of talent on the roster, and now the staff just has to develop it. It seems that by the way Tucker is recruiting and how he used the portal, the team could be back to being competitive in the Big Ten, making bowl games, and being a fun team to watch. Here's a quote from Tucker on how he thinks the direction of the program is going. Quote, "We're in a much better condition right now as opposed to when we were 4 practices in last season. I think there's a better understanding of what we're supposed to do in terms of our assignments and our culture in terms of how we practice, how we compete, how we train, how we meet. It's better. It's being cemented right now. We're light years ahead of where we were last season in terms of preseason preparations, and it's really not even close. With that being said though, we've got a long way to go." Basically what Tucker's saying is that there's a lot of promising young guys, and the culture is beginning to take shape there, but they have a long way to go and a few more years before they can be where he wants them to be. Switching focus to 2021, I'm going to explain how I think they're going to do. They opened up with Northwestern, and this game is really big. Despite the Wildcats always proving people wrong, Michigan State has more talent, and winning this game on the road in week 1 would be a huge confidence booster that the team needs. The difference between 1-0 and 0-1 is tremendous, and they really need to win that game. In terms of the games that they should win, that includes Western Kentucky and Youngstown State. I know only giving them 2 guaranteed wins is tough, but when you look at the remainder of their schedule, you'll understand. Games that should be 50-50 include Northwestern, Nebraska, Rutgers, Purdue, and Maryland, as all 5 of those schools seem to be about the same level, and I think any team could win any of those matchups. Unfortunately, they have a pretty difficult schedule, as they will play Indiana, which is a really good team, Miami, which is a great team in the ACC, they'll play Michigan, who I think has more talent, they play Ohio State, and they play Penn State, and all 5 of those games will more than likely be losses, but I would not put it past them to see them win a game or 2, just like they did last year, as no one projected them to beat Michigan or Northwestern last year. At first, I was very skeptical of Mel Tucker, as I didn't think a 5-win coach would be a big-time hire, but he has since proved me wrong. The team looked absolutely atrocious last year, but when you really go back and think that he only had 3 weeks to prepare before the world shut down, it'd be hard for any first-year head coach to see any level of success. They aren't going to be a consistent top 25 recruiting team, but they are landing solid 4-year guys, kids with physical upside, and players who want to win games. The transfer portal has also become their best friend, as they're basically landing a ton of talented players who didn't get a fair shot or didn't live up to their hype at previous schools. Giving them a new chance and a new culture could help these players finally pan out into what they were supposed to be, and Michigan State could become a fresh start for a lot of blue chip recruits. We'll have to wait and see though. If you're a Michigan State fan, what do you think of Mel Tucker, what he is building, and how do you think he'll do in 2021? And if you're a fan of college football in general, please be sure to let me know another coach or team I should take a look at next. Before you go, be sure to subscribe if you haven't already, hit that like button, comment your thoughts, check out my podcast and all my other videos on the end screen, including my video about what happened to Brian Lewerke. I hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.